right, I believe this means we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions, welcome to another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, aka Some Gadget Guy, the SGG of this terribly named podcast, but the QA is the important part, especially this week. We get to the last Monday of every month, and I like to hold what I call a pajama podcast. It's really loose. We're not doing the strict breakdown of news links and gadget blocks and those things. We just try to have a more casual, fun conversation. And this month, for the month of October, our last Monday fell literally on Halloween. So happy Halloween! If you're catching this, November 1st, listening back to the replay on this, we are holding our casual conversation podcast on Halloween Day. I don't know how anyone in the chat feels. I kind of feel like trick-or-treating, we need to make trick-or-treating a more national sort of a national experience where we work with communities and we work with cities and states to say trick-or-treating should always be the last Saturday of October. And then Halloween can still be October 31st. But, for schools, for kids, we've got Lex. She's really excited. She's going to dress up as a garden fairy. She put together her own sort of fairy ensemble. We've spray painted. We've spray tinted her hair pink. Great outfit. Definitely looks very kind of pirate inspired, a la Tinkerbell and the Lost Boys and all that kind of fun stuff. But we also have to be extremely judicious about her trick-or-treating because she's 7. She just turned 7 years old and she has school tomorrow. So she's going to be all lit up and excited from trick-or-treating, and then we're going to have to try and get her to bed, and we know tomorrow's going to be miserable. So if anyone else would like to support my my political aspirations, start going to local board meetings and town councils to say, hey, last Saturday instead of literally on October 31st, I'd be all for it. Happy Halloween! Already seen a great crew. We've got Steve, Q3 Becker, we've got Coppa Cash, McCorker, Ozzy Beach Bum, Dave Burns, Gormlord, Baseball Super, Control Alt Clay. We've got folks that are jumping in on the YouTubes as well. J-Man150 just jumping in there saying hey. Steve saying hello. Coppa Cash, we don't celebrate Halloween here. Coppa Cash, this might not be the podcast for you, because as we're going to talk about some gadgety stuff, I'm sure it'll happen in the conversation, I also felt like I just needed to take some time. I have been watching a ton of spooky, scary movies. I'm a big fan of the horror, and that is a normal part of my movie-going repertoire anyway, but in the month of October, it is just fun to kind of get your year-end catharsis on all of the big scary, and then you kind of sort of exorcisted that out of your system, and you can get into the end of the year holidays. I feel like I'm in a much better state of mind for Halloween. After Halloween, I'm in a much better state of mind for Thanksgiving and Christmas. So, Ted, let's campaign for this. I will make a company that specializes in gag candy, I think is what, lobby. Well, we don't have to punish kids. I still want to give kids candy. I want to give kids candy in the most reasonable way possible. It's, I don't want kids all like sugared up on a Monday night and then having to go to school the next day. It's rough. Oh, Dustadori is here now. Dave Burns, millennials are killing October 31st. Is there no end to the carnage of the millennials? Yeah, Gabaletta, Halloween on a Monday. Who would have guessed? Apparently, we were completely unprepared for the progress of linear time. I could not look ahead on a calendar. I'm absolutely one of those people. Oh, and Coppa Cash. Okay, good. Coppa Cash still loves scary movies, even if they don't celebrate Halloween. The original Exorcist, absolutely a fantastic movie. Someone had another comment here. I gotta scroll back up and see if I can find it. There it is, Clay. You should dress up as a lightning cable, Juan. The spookiest costume of all. Actually, if I were gonna dress up as any cable, let's go nerdy, right? The scariest. If I were to dress up as any scary tech thing right now, it would have to be the melting power connector on the RTX 4090. Am I right? Am I right? Up top, high five. We nailed it. I stuck the landing. That would have been the spookiest tech cable costume that I could think of today. If I were better at making like composites or like motion tracking or any types of graphics or anything like that, I would have started this as like my face just replaced by a melted 4090 connector. Copper Cash, the lightning connector. Gormlord just watched Terrifier. Very gross. So let's start off part of the conversation now. I'll do a little housekeeping. I put out a ton of videos and articles last week, and I'm exhausted. So I do want to talk a little tech. We can absolutely mix in a little tech, but I just kind of felt like we made it through the bulk of Techtober. The Pixel 7 Pro launch was a major part of kind of getting us to the end of the year. We've got updates, we've got accessories, we're gonna have buyer's guides, Black Friday. There's all of this stuff that's still gonna be happening. But when it comes to like launching product, I feel we're finally starting to settle down, and I can make videos about really using this stuff, not just announcing this stuff. Um, so, sorry, that was a really rambling way to get into a part of this conversation. I enjoy a good slasher film. I like, sort of the classic 80s era body count types of spooky movies because they're not really scary. They're basically just creative, gory comedies. Kind of got off that train when we really started pushing sort of the Saw style of torture into our media. So those types of movies don't really do anything for me. They don't build much suspense or anticipation. It's all about putting people in kind of like the worst situation possible, but in a really kind of gory, mechanical kind of way. And yet, the new Hellraiser just came out, and I thought it was okay. I thought it was pretty good. I'm not the biggest fan of the Hellraiser series, but this new one felt like kind of an honest return to form for what made the first two iterations of that movie series more interesting, and it kind of bypassed a lot of the gimmicky and hokey tropey bits. Like for some reason you always have to have a spooky, scary thing in space. So like they tried to do a Hellraiser in space, and it's not that good. A better version of that movie is Event Horizon. Event Horizon is the best Hellraiser film we never asked for. Flip side, like Jason. There's Jason X. Jason in space. Like, I, Doom is kind of like Night of the Living Dead in space on Mars. So, it's I like horror films that kind of ratchet up tension, and they can be gory, and you can have some blood and guts. I love zombie films. Zombie films are all about gore, but I like it when a horror film can kind of crank the tension into a good reveal or into a good like set piece or a good moment. Sorry, J-Man 150 wrote a short book. Let's read what J-Man 150 has to say. My Pixel 7 Pro finally arrived after 2 weeks. I pre-ordered it on the 13th of October and had to ring the company I ordered it from like 2 or 3 times. Sorry, the text gets weird when I'm trying to do this. And they just said that they were waiting on updates from the courier, which is PDP, a popular courier here in the UK. Anyways, apart from that rent, definitely worth the wait coming from an Exynos Galaxy S21 Plus. I think so. Again, I think you've made a good transition there. I'll be awaiting your thoughts on actually using the phone. I've been enjoying the Pixel 7 Pro. Dustadora, I feel like Barbarian was overhyped, but still thought it read really well done. Dave, that's an adorable question. Oh, Dave Burns says, are Hellraisers serious or schlock? Yes. The answer is yes. I just, I, you know, um, Hellraiser. So Hellraiser is one where if you go back to the original source in what the series is trying to accomplish, it's another one where you've got to untangle a lot of baggage. Um, to me, it's kind of like Michael Myers in Halloween. I look at that era of filmmaking and you get so many of these brilliant one-off films. Halloween is a proto slasher. It is really not as aggressively violent or as gory as like a any iteration of Friday the 13th. You know, so many films were inspired by, or the sort of, it was the progeny of those movies. Halloween feels really tropey and cliched because it created a lot of those cliches, but it never, it didn't like, it wasn't the perfect form of those cliches. They got ratcheted up in future movies. So you go and watch a modern day, like the new Halloween Kills or something like that. I haven't seen it yet. I love the original. I'm not the biggest fan of some of these newer Halloween iterations. But you got to untangle decades of all of this influence on, well, Mike Myers started this, so now we've got to do this, and now we've got to raise the stakes. You're like, okay, I guess. So now he is like a supernatural incarnation of pure evil. Hellraiser, I feel, is kind of similar. The original is this low budget, absolutely stunning example of low budget filmmaking. And it kicks off an entire genre of alt sadomasochistic alternative dimension evil media. Again, you can't have Event Horizon without the Hellraiser films. Like it's almost a direct line of movie evolution to get to those two pieces. And I really like the first two Hellraisers, not necessarily because of like the scope of the story or the tone, it's that they're very limited. I mean, a good chunk of the first Hellraiser film just takes place in someone's attic. It's not broad. It is very focused and intimate storytelling, mostly because they didn't have the budget to make it super big. So you go through future and increasing iterations of that concept. I think Nightmare on Elm Street falls into some of the same traps where every movie seems to be an iterative jump in what it is that they're trying to accomplish. And by the time you get to the last several of the kind of core canon Freddy films, he's become kind of a parody of himself. He's become sort of a mockable figure in this world of nightmarish evil incarnate. So then you end up getting like New Nightmare, which sort of resets everything and makes it a proto-commentary a la Scream. You know, it's a movie about the movie that they're in the movie, talking about the movie that they're in, and they're aware of the movie. That's fascinating. I think it kind of works. You know, Freddy can be that meta commentary. It's difficult finding other properties in the horror franchises where you can have that kind of reboot. And so instead, what I really like about the new Hellraiser film, I think it's very broad. It's really gory. They're trying to make it sort of a sexy pain devil demon thing, and they're taking the concept much more seriously than some of the iterative sequels in the Hellraiser franchise. I like that they're kind of paring it back down. They're not. You can't do Hellraiser that's self-aware of Hellraiser. Like it doesn't kind of work. So this Hellraiser is sort of a back to basics, and I think you could make a trilogy of movies out of that. I think you've got potential. You've got some runway again, where I think Hellraiser was starting to get just really silly with cosmic space horror, other dimension stuff. I think you start to lose the thread of what makes these villains, these Cenobites, scary. If you're way out in left field and doing crazy cosmic battle with these entities, I don't think that's what they're there for. I think they need to represent something else. Sorry. Fat Produce. Jason goes to space. I love Jason X because it is the best example of a boardroom. What can we do that we haven't done with this character? Bunch of executives in suits and ties making every single incorrect decision as to what to do with the movie franchise that they have the rights to. It is hilarious comedy. It is over the top. It is arch. I mean, it is like melodrama from the classic days of stage show. The music is way off. The set pieces are not, there's no anticipation, there's no suspense, and the final climactic finale of the movie is just hilarious. I mean, even some of the ways that they like distract Jason with high tech, new technology, like is just utterly laughable. And the movie is just a romp from beginning to end in how like celebrating every bad trope that has ever come down the line from Jason Voorhees movies. Jason Goes to Space. You could replace it with Ernest. It could be an Ernest Goes to Space movie, and it would be almost exactly the same film minus the body count. It's hilarious. Sorry, let me catch up on a few of these. Pal tracks. I need some supernatural stuff in my horror. I like supernatural. I also just like undead. I like various incarnations of vampires. But I just really need some suspense. So even when we're doing found footage, or when we're doing zombies, or when we're doing vampires, I need some slow burn. I need a little bit of a runway to kind of catch my interest and then make me feel unease at a consistent pace. I don't like it when we get too many jump scares. I don't like it when we get unearned jump scares, when they're just sort of, you let off all the tension, right? It's like a valve. I need the pressure valve to kind of ratchet up to an unsustainable spot so that I'm starting to crawl out of my skin, and then give me something that lets off some of that steam. It's pretty tough. Oh, Dustin Dory 1, don't you speak ill of Hellraiser Bloodline. Sorry. Hellraiser is not my franchise. I totally get it. And I absolutely adore where it starts from. It is just in keeping with so many amazing and brilliant classic scary movie setups. It doesn't quite hook. I can't quite, it doesn't scratch that itch. I can't. You can hear my stutter is starting to kick in on Hellraiser. I cannot properly articulate with words why it doesn't do it for me. But cosmic horror in general, and I feel the Cenobites kind of lean into this. Cosmic horror is very difficult to get right. Mouth of Madness or Cthulhu or something like this. So, okay, I need to put my coffee down. This is something that bugs me about horror derived from a sense of something larger than yourself. This is incredibly difficult to conceptualize and to visualize. It works so much better on the written page because the reader can inject their own sense of scale, what's going to scare them, and how big that thing is in terms of the great beyond. A Cthulhu is going to be scary for every reader for radically different reasons, because every reader will conceptualize their idea of ancient, timeless evil. Stephen King loves to play with some of these forces in his novels. I don't think he ever really sticks the landing because all too often he tries to visualize it for the reader. In it's this ancient evil that predates the universe and killed an ancient good, and it's this being of like pure dread. And at the end, he tries to visualize something creepy. It's a spider. Ooh, isn't a big spider scary? And it totally fails. That doesn't scare me. I mean, it's icky and it's gross, but it doesn't tap into this dread that you've been building on, like ancient cosmic evil. And to get the craziness of cosmic horror right, you have to imbue a character. A character has to exist in kind of a Keanu Reeves state. They have to be a vessel for the audience, right? They can't be too broad or too engaging of a character actor. It's almost like they've got to step back and let the audience sort of fill that role so that the audience can be afraid of what is happening in that moment. So you can't distract. It's a very like soap bubble thin layer of suspension of disbelief. But cosmic horror needs to be about exposing the audience to something they can't conceptualize and then bringing them back to their regular world, but they've seen something larger. So I can't remember where I read it, but someone wrote up this like experience on reading cosmic horror, and it's not that someone just goes crazy because they saw an ancient demon. Oh no, I'm crazy. In cosmic horror, so I kind of look at it like this: what if you took an ant and you gave them the intelligence and the perspective and the cognitive ability of a human for 1 second? And this ant could see everything that an evolved primate could see. And then you took all of that away from them and shoved them back into an ant colony with some sense of what they were left with. Some memory of having seen something so much bigger than they could rationalize, than they could conceptualize. And that's kind of what you need to do in cosmic horror. It's like you need to take a person and you need to elevate them well beyond what their normal life can account for, that they can really properly rationalize and conceptualize and put everything into nice neat little packages. It's got to blow that mind, and then you've got to bring them back to the regular world. And I feel like the new Hellraiser gets really close to that, where I feel like the original Hellraiser series for me never really kind of stuck the landing. It became more like, what can we do with chains? Chains are really scary. And oh, look, this person's got fish hooks in their face. And I never got that sense of something grander. So I feel like that's the best I can do to kind of explain why Hellraiser doesn't quite do it for me. I feel it's always right up to that edge. It's so close to kind of pushing me over and trying to do something even bigger, where even an Event Horizon, I feel, doesn't quite get there, but it gets a little closer. And I don't know what you can do in a movie to kind of achieve that. What you can do in a film where you're showing the audience something. It would be all about what you don't show the audience, and that's not always interesting filmmaking. You know, at some point you do need to show the monster. So I don't know what that means. Um, Fat Produce. I'm a wuss when it comes to scary movies, so I just watch Tim Burton movies with Danny Elfman soundtracks to get my Halloweeny feels. You know, as long as you're in the spirit of the season, man, I feel like you're playing along. You're doing just great. Twin Folk Tech, The Black Coat's Daughter is pretty solid as well. I have not seen that. I need to put that on my list. My list this year, I'm going to talk about some of the movies that I watched this year. Um, I kind of fell back. This year for me was a lot of nostalgic. I needed like the comfy revisiting of films that I was very familiar with. I think we're all kind of, real life has been kind of tough for a lot of folks this year. Oh, Copycash! I didn't even know there was a new Hellraiser. Same thing that I think kind of happened to Prey. I'll go to bat for Prey. Hulu has put out a couple of really solid movies lately that have not gotten the marketing that I think they need. And the new Hellraiser is deserving of, I think it's an impressive revisit of a classic horror franchise. And it's very difficult to get that kind of stuff right. And I think it was made in a good faith effort to bring the movie, the tone of the movie back to what made the original Hellraiser film so compelling. But same thing, it's like, it's existing on a Hulu marketing budget. And that's not enough. That's not enough to get people kind of lit up about it. Baseball Super, how small was the screen you watched it on this time? I'm not sure if you're, because I like to watch films on tablets, but I did most of my movie viewing after Lex went to bed. A few of these movies, so Lex would put on like something after dinner, and like we revisited a Scooby Doo flick. What was the other? Oh, Mitchell's versus the Machines. I was like, hey, do you want to try and watch something a little spookier? And she was like, yeah, the robots in Mitchell's versus the Machines were scary. Okay. We'll watch Mitchell's versus the Machines. So a few of those times where it was movies like, okay, yeah, this is a fun film, and I'm kind of sitting next to Lex on the couch, I'd have something playing on my phone with like a little Bluetooth earbud in, just kind of have some ambience. I was like double watching movies this Halloween season. But that's in keeping. So Baseball Super, if you're referencing what I like to talk about, I feel tablet 2 in the morning, absolute best way to watch a scary movie. And I'll get into that in just a bit. Gormlord, not every movie can be as good as Leprechaun in space. Did the Leprechaun movies go to space? Did I miss that? Please tell me that's a joke. I need to know that that's a joke. Dustin Dory. That is exactly what I was talking about. This is technically a spoiler for Jason X. It's maybe the best moment of the film where the movie is so hyper self-aware it becomes kind of a mockable entry in the franchise. But Dustin Dory writes, my favorite line from that movie is when Jason is in the simulation. He's basically trapped in a holodeck. They're just trying to keep him from killing everybody on like a spaceship or a space station or something. And the two girls said, do you want to smoke some pot and have premarital sex? And then he puts them in the sleeping bags and beats them with each other. Which is kind of a callback to one of the other kills in a Friday the 13th movie. I know in the kind of restart, they do that kill where someone's in a sleeping bag and he basically picks them up and throws like the sleeping bag into a tree repeatedly. But Jason X does it too, but it does it like completely silly aware of what makes a Jason movie, which is hilarious. Dave Burns, he said Valve and Steam. Time to talk some games. I did kind of just play through a bit of Alien Isolation. I was not into horror games as much this season. I was definitely into something more passive. Oh, Twin Folk. Okay, so I'm with you. Um, Twin Folk Tech says, I hate the humans are the real monsters type of horror a la The Walking Dead. I think it can be done really well. But man, that is a gimmick you can't go to very often for it to have an impact. If you want that to really land, if you want it to be good, it's something that has to be done very carefully and with a deft hand in kind of getting to that point. And that's why I think movie monsters and the metaphors, like the metaphor of a good zombie show or a good zombie movie needs to be kind of a bit clearer. The Walking Dead would almost immediately threw away any of the drama or any of the fear or any of the anxiety of living in a world with zombies and almost ham-fistedly ran into, but every person you're going to meet is actually the real criminal. And you lose a lot of what made the comic book so tense, issue to issue to issue, because the TV show is just this blunt, dull facsimile of what made the comic so much fun. Again, the comic, you would run into characters that were obviously evil, and humans are definitely an apocalyptic blight. You know, anytime you have a dystopian or a post-apocalyptic storyline, other people are going to be a danger. But I feel like the comic did a much better job of still making zombies a threat, where the TV show, they're only a threat when it was convenient for the plot for this totally capable character to somehow make a mistake. And now, oh, the zombies, oh, remember the zombies are still here. The Walking Dead TV show, I feel like, was horrifically inconsistent. The scariest part about that show was how bad the writing was. I actually haven't. I stopped watching at the prison. So after the prison, I kind of gave up. Oh no. Oh, that's right. Daylight savings time. So apologies. I probably should have put out like a tweet or a message or something before the stream. I'm so bad at keeping up with international time zones and stuff. Gormlord. Oh yeah, I think Sunshine is underrated. You never really get a good look at the villain, and it works really well. And then also, Sunshine is so great because like space on its own is terrifying. Space is like everything in space is designed to kill you. And you know, just on its own, you know, we're so comfortable with like Star Wars and Star Trek. I just jump in my spaceship and now everything's fine, and I have gravity and air. And you're like, no, space on its own is again, space on its own is a kind of cosmic dread. It is so much bigger and it's so much scarier than anyone ever really thinks about. And when you try to conceptualize space, you end up either quoting Douglas Adams or your brain just melts. Now, space is really big. I gotta go. Fat produce. Okay, holy frack, Jason X looks so bad, it's gold. So again, everybody here, Andrew, if you're not into scary movies, Jason X is gonna do you just fine. There are no legitimate scares in Jason X. Okay, so Twin Folk again. I'm a agree to disagree. Twin Folk says the lamest horror movies to me are serial killer movies. I hate it. If there's no supernatural element, I'm extremely bored. Like, oh no, someone has a knife and is walking really slowly towards a half-naked girl who keeps tripping over stuff. Again, you're totally correct in that there have been absolutely terrible versions of that, which aren't very interesting. I feel, I feel there's like we're getting into sort of a conversation on subgenres. So for me, a really effective thriller can be so much more fun and so much scarier than a traditional supernatural horror film if you've got good writing, good directing, and impeccable editing to drive you to that point. So, like in your example there are so many like made for streaming on Amazon movies about, ooh, creepy guy has a knife and he's gonna kill all these people. But then you can get into the meta version of that and go mumblecore, and a movie like Creep is surprisingly effective, even in it also being kind of a hokey, tropey found footage kind of film. But if you sit and you watch it and you don't let anything distract you, it's a very unsettling movie. Does it have the same kind of gore scares as like a good supernatural thriller? No. But it's very effective in creating a sense of unease. The flip side of that, like the big budget version of that, would be a movie like Seven. I think Seven is one of the most successful ratcheting of tension, ratcheting of horror, and it's like a proto template for what like Batman movies would become. A good detective story should also be able to fit into all of those things that manufacture anxiety in a thriller, right? So I would say that some of the things that happen in Seven are grotesque and horrific. Even if it's not technically a horror film, it's one of the scariest antagonists I think I've ever seen on the screen. So again, it's we can find any number of really bad exorcism and ghost films that are totally not going to do it for us, right? All of the copycats that came out after The Exorcist, all of the haunted house movies, all of the ghost stories, like y- you can find just as many bad examples of those as you can serial killer thrillers, right? Oh, he's scary, he's got a knife. Oh no, the house is haunted and the people inside were dead the whole time. Oh. Again, I feel like right there we're complaining more about bad filmmaking. Not necessarily the genres, but just how bad some of those individual movies can be. Ah. Oh, and Simon says, no, we are radically overusing jump scares. If anyone hasn't seen the original Halloween, it's one of my all-time favorite jump scares is in that movie where we're sort of quietly and intently watching this house, and a cop walks up to one of these characters, and the character just gasps, and it's so simple. There's no orchestra sting. There's no sound effect. There's no music stab, there's no jump cut. It is a human interaction between two characters where they are tense, and one of the characters kind of lets off some of that tension, and it works for the audience to also kind of gasp with him. You are watching the house with this character. It is so simple. And I feel like because of moments like that, now we've taken that up to speed ramp, scary monster running at the camera, big loud orchestra sound, and then the main character wakes up and it was all a dream. Like so many of those bad decisions now come from what was an effective moment in a low budget, tension thriller. Yeah, it's so brutal. See, Copycat, I'm kind of with you. Hellraiser was always funny to me. I literally laugh at every kill. Um, again, the first Hellraiser is so close, but again, it's scarier because they didn't have the budget to do something bigger, so they make this much smaller movie, and I feel like that's to me what made Hellraiser so interesting. When you give Hellraiser a bigger budget to go off and do way over the top setups, it loses some of its charm. Anyway, yeah. Sorry, I'm catching up on. Oh, Gavaletta. My daughter will watch grown-up scary movies and be excited about them while my girlfriend is cowering in the corner. I feel like that's going to be the setup in our house. I still don't know yet. Lex grew up as a little kid loving the classic kind of gothic horror monsters like Dracula and Frankenstein, the Mummy. And so I don't know if she's going to continue sort of appreciating the more grown up representations of those types of stories, or she's going to be more like my wife, who has a very brutally overactive imagination. And now I mean, like, I don't think she'll ever forgive me for making her watch Annihilation. So I sold it to her as like, yeah, it's this kind of science fiction-y film. There's some scary moments in it, but it's about these women scientists, and it never really got enough advertising. It's just such a shame because it's like this stellar, female cast, and that kind of got her like, oh, well, I'm gonna go support a movie about women. So I totally kind of steamrolled her, kind of like shoved her into that movie without her totally appreciating how scary it was gonna be. So she did not appreciate it, but I really wanted to watch Annihilation. So yeah, my wife is very, very much not into the scary movies we've been to together. We were together for the theatrical release of The Ring. Um, she refused to see 28 Days Later. Then Annihilation, and I also got her to go see It Follows. So It Follows was another one of the movies that I watched this month just for spooky good movie time. And she hides from the movie, but then she's hearing what's going on, and I guarantee you what she is imagining is happening in the film is so much scarier than if she were just to watch what was happening in the film. So I think she ratchets herself up, and it's pretty tough. But she'll have some pretty brutal nightmares after watching a scary movie. I'm hoping Lex will just join me on scary movie time, because if it's gonna be just me by myself and my wife and my daughter are not into scary movies, then I'm gonna be kind of bummed out. Oh yeah, Twin Folk. I'm totally with you. In fact, I've got a couple scary YouTube recommendations because there's going to be a very big deal release tonight on YouTube, and I am stupid excited. Tonight, a video world premiere, not on my channel, but I'm super excited. Twin Folk says, honestly, I mostly enjoy the horror shorts you can find on YouTube. Those are often more exciting than most feature-length horror films these days. You can live with a simple setup and payoff. You have a short period of time. You get in, you get out. You don't overstay your welcome. You're not building a logic of a world where people can pick apart, or you don't make any missteps. The horror short community on YouTube is brilliant. And then you start getting into some of the ARG, the alternate reality side of horror storytelling, and it's just absolutely phenomenal. Right now, I kind of feel like horror YouTube is a little too kind of stuck in some of these. I'm a spooky video, and look, here's Morse code, and you go to a Twitter, and there's a link, and then in binary, there's a spooky message. Like, I think we're kind of stuck right there. And I think someone is going to knock us out of it. Um, it's either that, or you're trying to rip off analog horror. So it's like, oh, I found this old VHS tape, and look, the video quality's all distorted. Ooh, scan lines. Spooky scan lines and tracking. Do you remember VHS cassettes had tracking problems? Ooh, that's spooky. There are some that are doing that really well. One of the things I'm going to talk about is doing that really well, but there are so many copycats now. It's like you've got to find something else that kicks off like what the next fad is going to be. But YouTube horror is fantastic. Oh, Dave Burns, Day of the Dead is the best version of Humans Are the Real Monsters. That's a really good one. I like that one. George Romero gets really heavy-handed. Um, like there's very little nuance or metaphor in George Romero, which I kind of adore. The to think that his most successful movie instantly fell into the public domain and he was never able to capitalize or monetize on it the way that he should have been able to, is one of the great tragedies of cinema in general, but specifically horror cinema. Like, this is the man that totally redefined the word zombie, and he never used the word zombie in his seminal Night of the Living Dead. He tried to do the same thing with vampire stories. He tried to do the same thing with that kind of late 60s, early 70s era of exploitation filmmaking of crazy people in a small town, literally the crazies. George Romero just like stumbled into so many of these concepts, of some of these ideas that got other filmmakers even more lit up, and kind of then succeeded the work that George Romero had done. But Day of the Dead is so on the nose about its representation of human survivors. And then you get into something like Land of the Dead, and it takes what we see in Day of the Dead and turns it into ridiculous comedy. Again, it is so obvious the message of what's happening. but rich people are the real monsters of society. It's so good. I love it so much. But it's good because it's not good. I just kind of, yeah, you gotta appreciate some schlock when you can get it. Raj, again, I'm so, there are so many that are so effective. Raj says, I like my horror movies with some ambiguity. The fear of the unknown is the real deal, folks. Again, I like, you can't show me the monster too early. And when you do show me the monster, it's got to be careful. You got to be real careful with it. I, it, I feel like this might be sacrilege to some people. I'm not sure what the mood of the room is, but I watched the movie Nope. Actually, I have it here, just the IMDb link. I've got a couple of my list ready to go on IMDb. Jordan Peele, writer director. Man, it is a movie that has sat with me. Like, I've resonated on it. I've thought about it. It's not like I can let it go. But what starts out as something really spooky, intense, and it makes you really anxious. I just feel the pacing of the movie shifts dramatically into the last act. And so what you're sort of sold at the beginning of the movie turns into something very different at the end. And it's not a twist, it's not a gimmick. There's a grounded, logical storytelling arc that happens, and you're following the arc and you're kind of on board, and then you understand what the characters understand, and they learn new things as you learn new things. There's no grave misstep. But what the movie ultimately accomplishes feels very different than what the movie was sort of setting up at the beginning. Now, I come out of an entertainment background, so there's so much about Nope that I really appreciate in terms of what part of this message is trying to accomplish. But I went into it with some expectation on what it might be, and I feel like that's what does the movie in. It's not a movie that is trying to satisfy my expectations on what I thought it was. And that's tricky. You can subvert your audience's expectations in good ways and in bad ways, and I don't think Nope is subverting it in a bad way. But it's very difficult to untangle what the movie really accomplishes from what I thought it was going to be. Very heady stuff. I'm trying not to spoil the movie if anyone hasn't seen it. But it is sort of in keeping with his other films, especially Us, where Us is not like Us doesn't really work as a literal, this is the event that happens and this is the consequence of that event and this is what the characters have to do to survive this event. It exists more as a kind of an over the top fairy tale, but set in the trappings of modern society. Us is very effective as a work of grand fantasy. What happens in Us is can't be a grounded, realistic kind of story. And Nope plays with some of those concepts. it's grounded when it needs to be, and it's sort of fantastical when it needs to be, and it sort of alludes to all of this other representation in classic literature, in media, in filmmaking, and then also in religion. Some really sort of floating ideas of like where do religious concepts come from in a world that now is trying to hyper capitalize every waking moment of everybody's lives. It's again, I can sit here and wax poetic about it while I'm not sure it was an effective movie. Like as an actual just I sat down and I watched a movie. I don't know if this works. But all these really interesting ideas that I just need to sit and kind of think about. So yeah, sorry. I too like a little ambiguity in my horror. I'm gonna take another drink of coffee. Hold on. All right. Whew. Oh, Sep, Juan just summed up what was wrong with that show perfectly. Ah, I feel there are many people who actually stuck with the show that can probably better explain what happened in The Walking Dead better than I'm just telling you why I got out of it, and why I sort of stopped watching. But yeah, Cop Cash, 30 Days of Night was brilliant, and 28 Days Later are two of my favorites. We got a concept here. Cop Cash likes movies with days in them. 28 Weeks Later works well too. I was always hoping that they would come back and do a 28 Months Later. I think you could have done a quartet of films. Again, you would need incredible writing and amazing writer, director, editor combos, like teams. But I always kind of hoped that you would have a 28 days, 28 weeks, 28 months, and 28 years. I was just like, again, it's just so perfect, like written into the structure, and revisiting. What I would love to do, what I would love to see is 28 years later be a spiritual adaptation of World War Z. Um, so you do the trilogy of films where they're real zombie films, 28 days, 28 weeks, 28 months. But then 28 years is like the survivor's account. It's the looking back on it. You shoot it faux documentary. People sitting in chairs, talking to camera. This is what we went through, and it's what makes World War Z, the book, so effective. Is these are all the survivor accounts. So you can actually make this storytelling way worse because in the back of the reader's brain, oh, but the person survived what's about to happen to them. So you can keep pushing. And then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and this happens, and this was awful, and this was awful, and this was awful. And you can kind of keep ratcheting up all of those individual stories of people that went through these trials, that went through these terrible circumstances. I would love to see that as a quartet. And again, 28 years later being something subversive in this current era that we were all sort of like hooked into true crime, right? It could be like a podcast series and the host is interviewing people that survived the events of the first three movies. You know, oh, this was a survivor from the initial outbreak. This was a survivor from like 2 years later when it re-broke out in this other region in the world, and this is how we all came together to fight it. I would love to see someone actually take that concept, not make a terrible Brad Pitt movie where it's just happening in real time. You sit back and you say, hey, this is actually what was interesting about the survivor accounts. We love documentary. We love true crime. We've seen parody of it work really well. What was that Netflix show where it was kids kind of making a serial style podcast about vandalism at a school? And you're like, it takes you like 2 episodes to kind of get in and realize like, oh no, this is a parody of Serial. This is a parody of true crime, but it's amazing. I want to see someone do that legit with a zombie movie. Go back and recount the events from a safe place. District 9 is the closest I think we've ever gotten to that. District 9 is a documentary about the events that we witness. It is past tense. Chappie, they try to do that, and halfway through the film, they give up on the documentary. They start out with these interviews like, oh yeah, we weren't ready for AI. And then the movie completely forgets, and you never revisit the closing part of that story. You could do District 9 with zombies, and you would have World War Z, the real version of World War Z. I mean, like, again, I guess the closest would be like an audiobook version of World War Z kind of gets us into that. Twin Folk Creep was good, but I didn't find it scary. So I would also ask, I mean, I'm way behind on the chat, obviously. I was talking about Creep a while back. Um, when you do movies like found footage, how you watch the movies is terrifically, incredibly important. And Twin Folk, I would ask, while you were watching Creep, had you given yourself the optimal found footage viewing experience? Are we gonna do this now? We want to do optimal viewing for a found footage film. I feel this works for every horror film, but it works best for found footage. Found footage, either you get the best communal experience by going to a movie theater and you get a great audience, or it's the worst movie you've ever seen. I snapped on this with the very first Paranormal Activity. I saw Paranormal Activity in a packed theater with people who were ready to be scared. All of the energy in the room is heightened. Everybody's creeped out. Every little jump moment is perfectly calibrated for a movie theater experience. I'm sitting next to this, I don't know, she's like 5 foot, 80-pound girl who, before the movie starts, has a giant bucket of popcorn and she's horse troughing it. Which is, as anyone knows me, my biggest pet peeve is like open mouth schmacking chewing sounds. Like I go misophonia, uncontrollable rage. I'm thinking like I'm gonna have to leave this theater. This girl is disgusting, and she's sitting in the seat right next to me. We're into the first night. We haven't even made it to the spooky stuff yet. We're just into the first night, and she has put a half full bucket of popcorn under her seat. She's got her feet up on the chair and she's rolled up into her sweater. It was a sweater or a hoodie. And she's watching the movie through like a strip of fabric. And that's how she spent the whole rest of the movie. And that's what the movie did to her. I loved the first Paranormal Activity. All of my friends said the movie was terrible. So then I would ask them, well, how did you watch it? Oh, yeah, I had a couple friends over and we put it on and it's so dumb. Because you're in your living room making fun of every stupid moment, because there were a bunch of stupid moments in the film, but anytime there's any tension, someone makes a joke. Anytime, there's a quiet moment, you're getting distracted, or someone's talking, or someone's laughing, or you're checking your phone. And found footage, again, it's soap bubble suspension of disbelief. You have to ignore, why would they still be running the camera? It doesn't work. If you try to scrutinize or if you try to pick it apart, the movie ultimately fails. If you're distracted for a second, movie ultimately fails. If the tension is starting to rise and someone makes a joke, you've let off all that tension, the movie ultimately fails. Paranormal Activity worked for me because no one was making dumb jokes and you were in a theater, so I wasn't checking my phone. You were just kind of trapped watching what was unfolding. You're sort of stuck. You can't let off the tension. You can't do something dumb. You'll get kicked out of the theater if you're making too much noise or if you're making jokes or if you're being too loud. We all have this like social construct of watching a movie in a theater, so you're trying to at least have some manners or you're on your some good behavior. Sorry, that was a really long preamble. The absolute best way to watch a movie like Creep or Wreck or Paranormal Activity or even the original Blair Witch, you gotta wait until it's like 2 in the morning. You're not gonna be distracted by notifications. You're not gonna be getting phone calls or text messages, like anything you can do. Society around you has shut down. I think 2 in the morning is kind of a good window, right? You got about 2 hours. People aren't going to be awake when you're done with the movie. Very, very little activity, and it should be dark. But you're going to make it even darker. You cannot watch a found footage film from your television in a small living room. Your television puts out too much light, and you can see too well around your home. So once your night sight acclimates to big television, but television is washing light over the rest of your room, not scary because you can see what's happening in your living room. If there's a dark hallway, you can see down that dark hallway. Nothing's going to be down there. I think a phone is too small, a TV is too big, right in that medium-sized tablet to laptop screen size. That is concentrated light, but it's not going to be enough light to illuminate a whole room. So you're staring at a tablet screen and your eyes are acclimating to that bright source of light. But when you look away from your tablet screen, the tablet screen cannot light up the rest of your room. So you see dark. It is pitch black. Your eyes cannot focus from screen to room to screen to room, and that's spookier. So when you can't see what's out there, normally as evolved primates, we go to where the light is. The light is the safety. We have a little campfire and the forest is dark and there could be predators out there, but the light of this fire will keep us safe. I will stay with the light. So in this context, our evolved primate brain is saying, well, stick with the light because out there down the dark hallway is pitch black and that's really spooky. We don't know what's down there, but we've got a light source here, so let's stick with that. Unfortunately, we have betrayed our primate senses because the light source is where the spooky is. Throw on your absolute best pair of comfy, loud, bassy headphones because you also want all those like really rich sound effects and sound design, especially if any of those filmmakers out there are playing with infrasound and like hitting you with some 16 hertz rumble. That stuff like kind of delivers a bit of unease. High quality headphones, good tablet screen, pitch black, super quiet around you in the house, shut it all down. And any movie like Creep becomes so much more unsettling because you can't look away, you can't get distracted. You've got headphones on, so the movie is occupying your brain, it's occupying your eyes, and you can roll through what makes that movie so much more effective. You're not going to be distracted from it, you're not going to be making jokes, no one is going to be making distracting jokes around you. You are just going to live in that film. I guarantee you, if you've never seen the film Rec, R-E-C, Spanish film, found footage film, watch it like that, and it is the most effective found footage film I think has ever been made. It is brilliant. It is glorious. So again, it's not on the movie. It's the movie was designed. A movie like Creep or a movie like Paranormal Activity or Rec or any of these other sort of like alt horror films, found footage I feel deserves like you have alternative rock. It's kind of like alternative horror. Even like Unfriended. What a goofy, dopey premise, but it kind of works today because we just spent 2 years in pandemic where our only method of talking to our loved ones was over Zoom calls. So when it first came out, Unfriended was a joke, but now it's actually a bit creepier because we kind of had to live that for a little while. But you watch it like that, it's going to be so much more effective than, I had it on this one evening and my wife and I were just, cracking jokes because the characters kept doing dumb things. And then I was checking my phone, looking up IMDb to see what this actress had done. You're like, no, you've killed the movie. The movie was designed to be consumed in a very specific kind of way. Paranormal Activity was designed to scare movie theater audiences, and it doesn't work. It completely fails if you've got a group of friends in a living room. Unless your friends can shut the F up, which none of my friends can. We're all too wacky jokey. Oh man, isn't that funny? So you kill the movie when you watch it that way. I'm gonna skip and try and catch up with some of this chat. Hold on. All right, baseball super. I'm too scared to try Juan's approach now. You gotta try it. I promise you. If you do like, and again, it works for so many other films too. My absolute favorite watching experience for Exorcist 3. Man, Exorcist 3 is such an intense suspense thriller of a horror film. And the little supernaturally elements are so subtle. The little like the things happening in the peripheral of the frame, it's so delicious. But if you watch it kind of casually, the movie is hokey and arch and over the top, and it can be kind of melodramatic, so it doesn't land. But if you watch it with that kind of focus, where man, if I look away from this screen, that hallway is super spooky at night. I'm gonna keep looking at the screen, but man, this is terrible. It's so good. Oh, it's so effective. I love it. Baseball super. And don't forget to put your feet in a feet in water with ice cubes. Yeah, you really build the tension by putting your feet in an ice bath. Gabaletta. So what you're saying is my Fold 3 is perfect for horror movie watching. All right, so because you guys know how I feel about like folding phones and stuff like that. Fold 3 would work. The only thing that would bug me about the Fold 3 is, I mean, it would work really well for Night of the Living Dead, because I believe Night of the Living Dead is native. It's pretty close to 4 by 3. I think it's pretty close to 4 by 3. Um, again, it's like you've got just sort of wasted space on that inner screen for letterboxing most movies. I mean, again, I feel like a proper tablet, especially if it's a little bit more wide, or if it's 16 by 9, or even 16 by 10, and you have a little less of the letterboxing or pillar boxing. I think that would work better, but your Fold 3 is going to be a little bit better than most phones would be. So I feel like you're in good shape there. Oh, Tech Love and Mama. Paranormal Activity was actually a funny movie to me. I enjoyed it, but I didn't think it was scary. But then again, it takes a lot for me to consider something an actual scary horror movie. So I'm going to put you on the spot. How did you watch Paranormal Activity? Did you watch it in a crowded theater? Did you watch it on your own, on a rental? Did you watch it with family or with friends? How you consume Paranormal Activity radically changes the tone of that film, because I thought it was incredibly effective for being a tension jump scare vehicle in a crowded movie theater of horror fans, the Thursday midnight showing of its main release here in Los Angeles. That's the vibe. So my vibe was packed audience full of people ready to have a good horror film experience on a Thursday night at midnight versus seeing it in my friend's living room with a bunch of friends who were making jokes throughout the whole film. It's again, they're totally different movies now. Taking the movie out of one context and putting it in another context totally changes what that film is. So again, I just like to ask, because like how you watch it is incredibly important. It's not like found footage films are not like classic horror where the movie itself can kind of shut up a home audience. If we watch the original Exorcist, there's a point in the Exorcist where no one's making jokes and the drama has ratcheted up, the acting and the performances are incredible, and the movie shuts up my annoying friends who like to make jokes during movies. That doesn't really happen with found footage. Found footage is low budget and schlocky, and it's more effective when there's some other social construct that shuts the audience up or prevents the audience from getting distracted. And that doesn't happen in your living room. It can't happen in your living room. Purposely gaming. Because if you don't run the camera, no one is going to believe you. If I'm in that situation, you best believe I'm filming it all. I mean, I make videos on YouTube, so we know what my instincts would be. I don't think it's that unrealistic. If someone's like, "Yeah, I'm still shooting video," all this scary stuff is true. But again, I understand why people knock found footage, because it's like, "Oh, you're running away from this monster. Why would you still keep filming?" I would be that guy. You're like, I need people to know. I'm probably not going to survive this. This is going to get uploaded to the cloud. I need someone to know what happened. uh, oh, Twin Folk again. Good tension though, and I totally feel that, especially for the way that it was kind of sold, it was promoted and advertised. Twin Folk says the Blair Witch is still the most terrifying horror movie for me. Every time I watch that, it gives me freaking nightmares. So I was really trying to be like a movie reviewer and a journalist, and for a local paper, I was writing movie reviews, and so I got a loaner copy of the Blair Witch like the night before the film premiered in Albuquerque. So let me tell you, everyone was talking about like, oh, and I got real queasy in the shaky cam and stuff like that, right? Because it's very amateur filmmaking, edited in a really clever way and then promoted in a really groundbreaking way, using the internet to tell us a story of a witch. I mean, like, brilliant, brilliant stuff. I mean, everything around Blair Witch was brilliant, even if the movie itself was an exercise in low budget amateur student filmmaking. I got a copy of Blair Witch and I was watching it with my then girlfriend. Um, we'd never seen anything like it. The press review copy came on an old beat up VHS. So the image is distorted and it's all warped because of just it had been passed around so many, like, this was like the VHS that they would send to local regional reviewers, and it probably was like a copy of a copy of a copy. I mean, it came in a nondescript envelope with no labels on it. Already, with everything else that goes into the Blair Witch, that's creepy enough. Later, that idea would be celebrated in a movie like The Ring. I've got this VHS tape. Oh no, what happens if I watch it? That's what came to my doorstep. So we put it in, and I have to adjust the tracking. This tape is worn out. There are these, like, not garbled, but you know what happens with VHS audio when the tape is getting stretched. So there are sequences where it's getting fuzzy and scan liney. There are sequences where the dialogue is getting warped, not fully distorted, but just kind of warped because of the tape. I go back and watch Blair Witch. It is not nearly as scary because my first viewing of it was on a degraded VHS. And the thing that really sealed the deal, that really sealed the illusion of what Blair Witch was, the press copy had a time code on it. So it was like we were watching actual footage from an editing bay. So you would see this little ticker kind of going in the upper left corner, and it like made the illusion of finding this footage so scary. Oh, it was so good. So my girlfriend and I, we watched it that one night. I kind of write up my review. This is incredible. We watch it again. It's just as scary the second time. Even more, even scarier knowing what's coming. I finally get to go see it in the theater. Not scary. Not as scary at all. When it is magnified to a giant screen and you see every wobble of the camera, the image was so much clearer. And we know the movie isn't that well shot, but seeing it, hyper magnified and clearer, less distortion, none of the warbling VHS degradation sound effects. I walked out of the theater going, wait a minute, that wasn't a part of the movie. All that stuff that I really loved about the review copy was not what was in the film. But I still have a soft spot in my heart just because those first two nights seeing the press copy of it was so good, was so effective. Oh, Rico Man, so this is on my list too. I don't think I'm gonna get to it tonight. Tonight is The Omen. My Halloween, every year on Halloween, not on Halloween night, but for the Halloween season, I have to watch The Omen with Gregory Peck. One of my all-time favorite scary supernatural horror films. I adore it. I need it. It's Richard Donner at his best. Patrick Troughton, a former Doctor Who, is in it. Gregory Peck is incredible. I just can't say it's all for you. Just so many chilly moments. David Warner is a supporting character. I mean, it's just so good. So that's what we're gonna watch tonight, and then I'll probably follow up Werewolf by Night at some other time. The werewolf film that I caught this season, I was debating between revisiting Ginger Snaps or Dog Soldiers, and I ended up rewatching Dog Soldiers, and then finishing Dog Soldiers. I kind of felt like I should have watched Ginger Snaps instead. Um, Again, not enough really good movies about werewolves. Werewolves are a really fun movie monster that I don't feel ever really get the same kind of singular attention. Like, they're in the underworld films. Okay, I feel like we need more the change of the monster within kind of storytelling. Like, you get little glimpses of it with like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I think The Invisible Man is a really good metaphor for some of that, the evil that lurks inside. But a werewolf is just such a grotesque outward appearance of that metaphor. An American Werewolf was an American Werewolf in London. Amazing, just an amazing film. Oh, see, Tech Love and Mama. See that? So no, you didn't watch it right. She says I rented it, watched it in the dark at like 10 p.m. with my husband. It was good, but not super scary to me. So you watched it with your husband, so you were safe. Your husband was going to protect you. Your glorious husband protector. When I watch scary movies with Marie, she's always like, my husband is so manly. None of the scary movie stuff would ever possibly scare me because I'm in a safe space with my husband. So whatever scary movie. I'm totally joking. That is not what. I have not. That's another one. God, I've got so many that I need to catch up on. Have you watched Netflix Dracula short series? It's not a scare you series, but more of an unsettling, spooky series. Nah, I haven't. I need to watch. What was it? Guillermo del Toro put up a little anthology series, and I need to watch that too. It's so there's so much good stuff out there. I need to kind of catch up on it. Tech Love and Mama. The Ring was good. The Ring is just brilliant. I love The Ring. Even revisiting The Ring now, it's scary because of all the analog. Again, analog horror. Again, so good. Cop of Cash Cloverfield was good. The movie that I revisited this Halloween season. Let me see if I can find it. I pulled it up. So again, interesting in how we play with a franchise, right? Because it's not a direct sequel. It kind of lives in a similar universe, but I really thought the claustrophobia of 10 Cloverfield Lane was pretty effective. So I didn't revisit Cloverfield this year, which again is just a really solid. It's a really good example of found footage. I went creepier and more claustrophobic. So that was that was kind of my jam this year. Like John Goodman and Mary Elizabeth Winstead are flippin' phenomenal, playing off of each other in this like power struggle in what could be a post-apocalyptic world, and it spoon feeds the audience just enough information that bad things are happening outside, so stay inside. Again, 2 years living in a pandemic, that is so much more effective now than when it was first released. When did this movie come out? 2016. Whew, man, I'm getting old. Yeah, if you haven't watched 10 Cloverfield Lane since before the pandemic, watch it again. Because boy, is that eerie now that we've lived through something pretty brutal like that. Um, oh, Pakistan. I'm finally caving. I need to find a good Blu-ray reader. Some of the DVD contents look like crap on my 4K screen. So I am that snob. Like you can see right above my head, behind the little stuffed dog, that's Rex, my little stuffed pooch that I use in a lot of my camera videos. The entire section behind him are DVD boxes, and I've started rebuying like my absolute favorite movies on when they get a good 4K transfer. So when I get a good 4K Blu-ray that I can rip, and I have a little Blu-ray reader in my silly giant workstation here, I'm gonna support the movie. I'm gonna buy it. I'm not just downloading stuff off the internet because I can, but I want to watch it how I want to watch it, where I want to watch it. And I mean, they're like 30 gig files when I compress them, and they look so good. Shaun of the Dead with all the film grain in crisp 4K Blu-ray from that transfer. Oh, chef's kiss. Oh, it is such a good looking movie. I love it so much. It's really, really good times. Really, really good times. Twin folk, Juan is like Apple when it comes to horror movies. You're holding it wrong. I love it. I mean, come on, in a way, it sort of is though. Regularly, and I'm not picking on anyone in this chat. Regularly, when I'm talking about like, oh yeah, I thought this movie was really effective, and I have a friend who's like, I didn't think it was that good. It's like I know how you watch movies. I know you're sitting on your couch staring at your phone and occasionally looking up at a TV that's way too far away. Don't try and tell me that you really watched that movie. Come on. Come on, son. Oh, yeah, Tech Love and Mama. I mean, when it comes to like the core. So I think one of the main differences, though, is I think when so Tech Love and Mama writes a lot of the movies you say you love though are the same ones I love, and I agree. American Werewolf in London is an awesome movie, and I'm not seriously trying to like dissuade you from your opinions on films. I reach a certain point where the accomplishment of making a movie is profound. If you've ever been anywhere near a TV or a film set, it's still kind of amazing to me that any of these things ever get finished. So a new movie comes out, and I want to try and meet the movie on its own terms. And I feel like for a lot of people, we get so hyped up on being sort of a social media critic of media that we kind of forget what the trappings of all of that entail. Just getting to finished kind of deserve. It could be the worst, most cynical. I got 1 star for a day, and I built a movie funding package out of that. I just saw some movie like on Amazon, and you can tell the whole reason they even shot the film is because they had George Takei for a day. And so it's about like cheerleader ninjas. This movie is awful. It is a bad movie. It is still amazing to me that the movie was finished. But I'm going to enjoy that movie on its own terms. And the movie isn't trying to accomplish high cinema. It's not trying to be a good movie. It is exactly what it knows it is. It is a movie where they had one sort of celebrated old actor, and they knew that they would get some kind of SEO on him being in the movie, and that's all it is. So when I get a little defensive of movies like Paranormal Activity, because so many of my life experiences have been, oh yeah, I thought that movie sucked. And you're like, well, then you have terrible taste in movies and you didn't really watch it. Or you watched it in a way where you were able to kind of turn off anything that was effective about the movie. I get defensive about movies in the same way that I get defensive about smaller, less popular, or niche smartphones. It's like so many of the people that I feel review movies are doing a terrible job of really trying to figure out what the movie was, and instead are just like, well, it would have been cooler if this, and then the characters make bad decisions, and then this happens, and then that happens, and I thought it was dumb, and you're like, okay, that you went out of your way to have a poor experience with this film, because I sat and I watched this movie, and I went out of my way to kind of set up what I thought would be an effective way to watch this movie. And again, I describe what my favorite way to watch a scary movie is, and I get a lot of reactions from people like, oh, but I'm not going to do that. Well, then, are you really watching scary movies? Or are you just kind of sitting next to a scary movie while it's playing? Because the schlockiest, the dopiest, the leastest budgetest mess of editing films can still kind of engender a reaction that can be fun with horror. But, I go into those with that same kind of energy. You give me like, a Night of the Living, oh, what is it? A Return of the Living Dead, schlocky, low budget sequel. There's like so many of them where you could tell like we have this one set and we're just continuously redressing this one set. Oh, it's an army base, and that's why the zombies are gonna kill you in this one hallway set that we have. And you're like, but I sat and watched that movie, and you know what? That was really fun. It's not gonna stand up to, Dawn of the Dead. If I want to say it's like Return of the Living Dead 3 Contagium or something like that. I can't remember the name of that movie. But so many of those, like, I can find something to sort of appreciate that they even finished making the film. Like, that to me is still kind of amazing. And so I'll defend it for what it is, not trying to claim that it's some amazing horror film, but if you can't find some fun in that, then I feel like that's a you problem, not a problem with the movie. So there you go. Fat produce. My favorite horror story is the Amazon Fire phone because it went on fire sale. Oh, Twin Folk, and like from a similar discipline, Twin Folk. I used to be a gaffer for a few years, and yeah, when you're actually on set working on a production, you really do watch movies in a different way. You have a greater appreciation for a completed production. I was a sound guy, so I went from being just the dude holding up boom mics to being like a location mixer. And man, I've been on some shorts where it's like I don't think they'll ever be able to finish this. They've got all this footage. I don't think they have a short film. And then in editing, some magic happens, and you're like, yeah, that's not the movie they wanted to shoot. That is absolutely not the short film that they thought they were going to accomplish. But they took all of this footage and they still made something out of it. One of the series that I was most proud of working on was it was a web series called Shelf Life, and it's supposed to be a live action kind of riff on Toy Story. It's these toys that kind of come to life, but they're very crude and they swear a whole bunch. And I did sound on all four series of that web series, and it never really got the attention that I thought it deserved. But we're talking people like in their sort of condo, they gutted a condo and turned it into a little mini YouTube film set and shot four series and crowdfunded a successful fourth season. And it was fun. It was great. It was utter catastrophe the entire time from beginning to end. Everything that could go wrong with the production went wrong with the production. And at the end of it, it's still this really funny, goofy, tropey web series on live action web series comedy. And it's great. So it's really fun. Oh, dude, Twin Folk. So yeah, I revisited this one too. Hold on, where is it? So again, in terms of paranoia, so I really like good paranoid films too, like Frankenheimer films, Second, 7 Days in May, The Manchurian Candidate. Anything that can kind of ratchet up tension through nothing is what it seems is also really fun too. The 2020 Invisible Man is absolutely fantastic. I had not seen it before. I just watched it a couple nights ago. And I've never really fully appreciated the classic gothic horror of the original story of The Invisible Man. And I feel like the 2020 version does a phenomenal job of modernizing something that I don't think is particularly effective on its own. The classic idea of the Invisible Man, I drink a potion and now I'm invisible. And now that I've turned invisible, I can hurt people, does not work nearly as well as the context that they put that idea into for this 2020 remake. Highly recommend Twin Folk. That is a great recommendation. Oh, Tech Level Mama. I'm being silly here, but don't take anything I'm saying as like criticism of where you've been. I was just saying I love finding people who love the same type of horror. It's not as easy as you think to find like-minded people. Um, it's it's one of those things like I was such a theater geek in high school because I could find some people who were sort of adjacent to the things that I liked. But at the same time, like I was also track and soccer and cross country and into sports. And then I was also a band geek and I was a theater geek. I was also like a speech and debate team geek. And it was like I was bouncing through so many of these little mini pocket communities because like I'd have a couple friends who were into this kind of music and this kind of stuff. And I found them in sports, and then I was also a fan of like dance and performance, so I kind of had my theater geeks, and I liked these types of horror films, and it's like I had to have all of these different communities to kind of find a few of the people who liked a few of the things in one genre of entertainment that I liked, and I was all over the place for it. It's like it is still one of the only beautiful things left about social media is being able to kind of craft. If you want to find a community of people who only ever watch like the worst found footage films, there's a group somewhere on the internet that's going to be all about that. And it's thankfully a little easier than it used to be to try and find folks like that. Oh man. So I think I understand what you're saying. So True Pax is saying enough bad quality movies have been seen to push folks back to physical. Do you mean in terms of like physically going to a movie theater and watching it, or more like practical effects? Because in terms of practical effects, one of the other movies that I made a point of watching this year was oh, do I have the thing up? Yeah, The Thing, 1982, with Kurt Russell and Wilford Brimley and Keith David. So I definitely spent some time watching that. I mean, when I was harassing TK Bay about watching Prey, I also went through all the Predator films again. They're not horror; they're kind of like sci-fi action, but there are some tense and suspenseful moments, and there's some good monster effects and some good gore. It kind of ushered me into October. Like it kind of got me into October. That was sort of what started me off. But then after that, I was like, oh, 1980s. What's a good, like, real good creep show kind of flick? And I had to rewatch The Thing. So it's been good times. Um, oh man, Twin Folk, you're bringing Uwe Boll. Man, I don't know that I've got the fortitude to tackle any of that in this, but yeah, that's tough. Oh, dude. Simon says Hypno, the marathon man has the most excruciating scene ever. Olivier is scary AF in that. So that kind of helps. So for me, that's in keeping with like what a good classic thriller, or what a good like a good human scare can be. So much of like supernatural works because of the unknown, because of the things that we don't understand about life, and they can be metaphors for other things. So, I'm sorry, someone mentioned it earlier in the chat. Babadook. What a gorgeous example of monster as metaphor. You know, the memory of a loved one haunting a family is palpable, and it's terrifying, and it feeds into like parent horror in ways that like Bird Box kind of achieves, but it doesn't really hit with as visceral an emotional edge. What was there was another one that we just watched recently where it was like metaphor was like ghost is memory, and letting go of the memory of someone is so much more painful than losing them in the first place, and then it just like sort of eats away at the living. There was a French film, They Came Back, which is sort of zombie adjacent, but it's not zombies, brains, I'm eating people. It's just this little town wakes up one day and everybody who's died has just come back. And it's like they're just back. And everybody has to deal with like this sudden influx of population of people and what to do with them. Like, do they get social services? They're dead, so they haven't been paying taxes. I mean, it is such a French film, but it's also just eerie. Nothing about it is scary. There's no big climactic payoff where they have to fight the dead people who came back and crack zombie skulls or anything like that. And there is no gore. There is no like, no one's decayed. Everyone's come back pristine, which in some ways is even eerier than if they had come back with monster special effects and makeup. But again, it is just that haunting idea of letting go of the memory of someone that you've lost. And oh, it's just, I get goosebumps, but they're not scary movies. They're thoughtful, they're contemplative, they're patient, and they're drama. It's not even a thriller, it's a drama that kind of ushers you through that. I think really good ghost stories can kind of evoke that too. The Haunted, is it The Haunting? What is the Haunted House movie on Netflix? I feel does a good job of balancing both the more contemplative idea of ghosts and the sort of literal spooky, scary things on the screen idea of ghosts. It's the same guy who did Midnight Mass, and now I can't remember his name, and that's terrible. I don't think Midnight Mass was as effective as a gothic horror piece. It was really just a collection of monologues about what happens to you after you die, but it was very thoughtful. And I like quiet and thoughtful and monologues that kind of help you untangle difficult concepts through the metaphors of horror. I don't know. Sorry, I just kind of went off there. Olivier, Marathon Man, very good. Sorry. Oh man. Rico Man 17. What movie should we recommend to Rico Man 17? He's saying, what movie would you recommend I watch tonight? Well, it's Halloween night. So one of the films that I would recommend we watched on the Patreon, patreon.com/somegadgetguy. We like to do I like to do movie nights where everybody gets a copy of a movie and we all sort of sync up playback at the same time, and then we jump in a Discord chat, excuse me, and we kind of hang out. This I have not been doing them as regularly as I should be. I wanted to do them like every 2 weeks, but they're kind of just becoming monthly. So apologies on that. But the last movie night that we covered was Trick or Treat, which I think is just a gorgeous, phenomenal, funny horror anthology. It's kind of horror comedy, but with some pretty good, like actual ratcheted, scary moments. And then it's maybe one of the most Halloween films that's ever been made because it's about Halloween. It's about the traditions of Halloween, the ghost stories and the monster stories of Halloween. And then if anyone's interested, I this was one that we covered way back. It was like over 10 years ago on the movie review show. So you can see a 12 years younger version of Juan rambling philosophically about a scary horror anthology film. But if you go to archive.org, there is a copy of our old podcast, our old web series, movies you may have missed, talking about Trick or Treat. So again, for Halloween night, that's one of my go-to recommendations. But there, again, it kind of just depends on what you're in the mood for. If you're in for gore, if you're in for tension, if you're in for spooky, if you're in for like thriller, anything like that. There are tons of movies that I'm sure we could recommend. Oh, True Backs. Okay, talking about physical media to avoid quality issues. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I understand what you were saying now. Um, Streaming has been fine, but I'm so tired of paying for multiple streaming services and still not being able to find copies of the movies that I like. And we're not talking about obscure stuff like up there on the shelf. For a while, it was difficult to get good streaming copies of all the Simon Pegg, Nick Frost films. So I went out and bought the 4K transfers for Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and World's End. I just want to own them. I don't care where they license those films next. I have four really nice 4K transfers, and I feel like I'm good at 4K. Like maybe I'll buy them again if 8K becomes a thing. I don't really think 8K is going to be a serious thing anytime soon. I have no plans on buying an 8K TV anytime soon. For now, 4K and higher frame rate way more interesting to me than 8K on a TV. But let's see, I've also got the Rec collection. I've got the new transfer for Psycho. Hitchcock. Hitchcock is brilliant filmmaking to be watching during the Halloween season. The Superman, Die Hard. It's just like anything that I know, I want to just own this. I don't ever want to have to look for Shaun of the Dead. If I want to watch Shaun of the Dead, I want it to be as few button presses as possible, and then Shaun of the Dead is in front of my eyeballs, and I can just watch Shaun of the Dead. So for movies like that kind of fit that tier. The Omen. I have a beautiful transfer of the original Omen. I want to push a button on my phone, and then any screen that's in front of me, I am watching The Omen, and I'm good, and I'm happy. So yeah, I'm totally with you there. True Pal Tracks. True Pal? True Pal Tracks? I don't know how to say your name. I'm sorry. Twin Folk Babadook is a modern classic. Completely agree. Ah, man, it is so good. And you see, like, there's so much humanity in it. It's just so brutal. Ah, I love it. Simon says, if no, they've not been paying taxes and they came back? Undead corporations are the next horror fad. Thank you, Mike Flanagan. Mike Flanagan did The Haunting of Hill House and Midnight Mass. I really hope he can come back a little bit more to the horror side of whatever future project he might want to do, because I feel Midnight Mass kind of fails in being good horror, but it is very good drama under the guise of horror, if that makes any sense at all. Ah. Simon says, no, are you sporting a chin beard one? I don't know what was going on. I needed someone to make fun of me harder. But I was kind of sporting this Amish look for a bit where I buzzed everything down and I had like just a little bit of beard growth, but then I would shave off my mustache. I don't know why I thought that was a good look, especially with the flat caps that I used to wear back then too. It was just all around not good, not good. And there's plenty of video for posterity's sake on me playing with stupid looks on video. Gormlord, Tucker and Dale versus Evil. If you like horror comedy, so good. And Alan Tudyk, flippin' brilliant. I've gotten to work with Alan Tudyk. He is amazing. He is gracious. He's one of the most fun, engaging performers I've ever worked with in voiceover. The project I worked on with him was this like fun sci-fi video game, and he came in and just rocked my socks. I mean, it was just an incredible performance. He's awesome. I'll watch. He's on Resident Alien now on Sci-Fi, and the show is doing some really bizarre things, and I don't care because I just want to watch it for Alan Tudyk and his performance. Absolutely a fantastic pick. Tucker and Dale is awesome. I still kind of keep hoping that maybe we'll get a sequel because it would be kind of fun to do. The first film sets up like kind of these horror tropes, and the second film can be kind of a commentary on sequels, kind of like what Scream did, but with horror comedy instead. Like it could be really fun. I don't think we'll ever get it. It's such a shame to me that Tucker and Dale did not do better at the box office because it is phenomenal. Do do do. Midnight Club was trash. I haven't seen Midnight Club. Sorry, I don't know. Um, oh, Aditya, no. This is not something to be concerned about. Aditya, I'm generally concerned if my partner will be someone who watches horror films for fun, but then again, love is probably worth the trade-off. Oh, buddy. Again, don't go into like a relationship being like, do you like scary movies? Because I don't, so I don't know that we can be in love or anything. So goodbye. I adore, I obsess over horror as a genre. My wife wants nothing to do with it. We've been together since 2001. I feel you can still find some happiness with a partner who maybe enjoys horror films. I think you're going to be fine. So I do want to kind of set this up too. Just going to get into the end of this, and thank you. I needed this as kind of a podcasting catharsis. I've just been in deep. Real quick, just kind of breakdown on some of the other films that I've been watching. So there was Nope, The Invisible Man. It Follows was just a really good set piece, good eerie tension for this Halloween season. Then Marie and I watched together Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1978. I believe. Oh yeah, it's right up here. I have the IMDb page up, and I'm trying to remember from memory. I can remember the Donald Sutherland classic, 1978, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I'm literally showing you the webpage. So trying to do all this from memory is kind of silly. Flippin' phenomenal, classic late 70s paranoia, kind of into the drugs of the time and the fads in psychiatry of the time. Like the 1978 Invasion of the Body Snatchers might as well be called Gaslighting Women, the movie. It's like so many scenes of this woman saying like, I don't know what's happened to my husband. He's not the same man. You don't understand. He's different. He's been replaced. And then old man psychiatrist going, no, listen, lady. It's the problem is in your brain. Your brain is the problem, woman. Come see me. I'm a psychiatrist. And then society falls apart because we just didn't listen to a bunch of 1970s housewives that their husbands had been replaced by evil pod people. It's incredible. From a modern perspective, it is so fun going back and like what makes you human and feeling love is what makes me human. It's so 70s. I love it. It's so good. Simon says if no stupid women's. Oh. Yeah, the Donald Sutherland Invasion of the Body Snatchers is funny and eerie. It's so good. So I also watched The Thing. Marie and I also watched Ghostbusters. Again, kind of more, definitely more a comedy, but with some spooky elements. The opening sequence of Ghostbusters is really effective ghost storying. Gormlord, did you just use gaslighting properly? Glad to see that. Is there a an incorrect way to use? Are people gaslighting the definition of gaslighting? Did I miss this? Someone tell me, like, what are what are people using gaslighting in a context that's incorrect or inappropriate? I also rewatched The Descent. I talked about that on a friend's movie podcast. A buddy of mine does this little show called The Kids on the Escalator, and they were talking about scary movies. And one of the things that kind of came up was movies where kind of the characters are more capable, and the setting of The Descent is scary enough on its own for someone like me who's crazy claustrophobic. Excuse me. That when you get into the horror of The Descent, you're already kind of on edge just because where the characters are is kind of creepy. Oh, Gormlord, people use gaslighting interchangeably with just lying. Okay, 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 okay. That makes sense. That would be an incorrect definition of the phrase gaslighting. So I try to hold to gaslighting when there is something subversive or something intentionally, cynically untrue about the context. So, like, the Invisible Man, the 2020 Invisible Man, is another one that you could call it gaslighting women, the movie, and only there's a pretty good body count on this woman getting gaslit. So yeah. Let me get this out of the way. 10 Cloverfield Lane. I did rewatch Rec. I rewatched Rec in exactly the way that I described it. Tablet. It was about 1 in the morning. It wasn't 2 in the morning. Tablet with my one more headphones, the cans, the Sonoflow, and it's just as effective today as it's ever been. It's so good. So Rec is absolutely on one of my all-time greatest list, and I think it is the best example of found footage. Like, I think this is the peak of found footage filmmaking, and we haven't found anything to quite match it. And then tonight we're gonna watch The Omen. But before we watch The Omen tonight, I did want to cover 2 YouTube channels that I think have been a lot of fun. Oh, this is my friend. Yeah, so this is Kids on the Escalator podcast. And they're doing like a movie rundown, like all of their favorite horror films. I think they might be streaming tonight to wrap up this series. So you can try and catch them. But I was on their second episode just breaking down sort of their 15 scariest favorite scary films of all time. Oh, Simon Says Hypno. The Horde is a very good French zombie film too. Again, there's something about French filmmaking. I really enjoy it. Sorry. So I want to highlight this one. I have watched way too many. So up on the screen right now is a YouTube channel called Gemini Home Entertainment. So I was just going back and we were describing things like the Blair Witch Project. Analog horror is all about this, like, I found an old VHS tape and it's got spooky video on it. Ooh. There are so many of these, like, horror storytelling elements on YouTube. And I think one of the things that really sucks about YouTube is you will probably be more successful on YouTube talking about other things on YouTube than making things on YouTube. And so I want to highlight Gemini Home Entertainment because I don't even think they've made anything recently. I want to say the last video they made was like 8 months ago. But Gemini Home Entertainment is this little low-budget analog horror series. And it's all told through these little snippets of like news broadcasts and educational infotainment videos interspliced with someone's like camcorder footage being out in the woods. I think this is super effective because of all the things the series doesn't tell you. It doesn't spoon feed you all of the exposition of the protagonist. If you just watch each video individually, I want to say like the longest video is maybe 7 minutes long. And I don't think they've done that many. I want to say let me see on this YouTube channel, I think they've done Hold on, I'm looking it up. Was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4? They've done 17, 18 videos. And the longest one is 9 minutes long. Is 9 minutes long? Yeah, 9 minutes long. So you could watch all this in an evening easy. But the whole point is that you kind of marinate with each one little snippet of video and it sets up a particular aspect of the world. And so it's exposition and storytelling in one. But without a protagonist that sits there and sits you down and says, well, this is what's going on with this thing, and it's evil, and I've got to fight it, and here's the tools. And like, you never get that moment where they just word vomit everything that's happening. So here's the bummer. This channel's actually done pretty well. A lot of these little ARG game horror YouTube set pieces, maybe they pick up some audience, but then channels that talk about YouTube horror will get like millions of views, and then the actual videos will get like tens of thousands. So Gemini Home Entertainment is one of the few that I feel has broken out into its own pocket success, but I think its most watched video on this channel is 500,000 views, which is really good. I'm not taking anything away. That is an incredible accomplishment for a little YouTube channel. But I've seen so many commentary and reaction videos that have had like millions of views. And I just feel like that is incorrect. The actual channel should have millions of views per video, and the commentary can also have millions of views, but I want to have sort of the celebration. It's just, I want that to be more exciting. So I lovingly, I'm putting a shout out just for Gemini Home Entertainment as one of my favorites of this style, of this genre. YouTube, short form, little snippets of story. You don't have to invest too much, but it's all about eerie tone. It's all about suspense, and they don't have the money to make this more spectacular or more grand or more special effects-y. The practical and character and creature effects in this are actually surprisingly good for this type of storytelling. So Gemini Home Entertainment. Now, as we're kind of getting into the end here, I also want to throw out a huge plug. I believe they are the originator of analog horror as we understand it today. Some people are going to fight me on that because we've had other examples of found footage or other types of storytelling that predate this YouTube channel, but I don't believe analog horror could have existed before the YouTube generation and our ability to look back on old technology. Like, think about how many YouTube channels are really effective at talking about like old computers and old game consoles. I mean, I love going through and watching people rebuild Commodore 64s. That is fun for me because it takes me back to my childhood. You know, I didn't get to grow up with a Tandy. I grew up with an 8088. So I remember what it was like cracking open this beige box that was starting to discolor, and my dad would have to like resolder components on this circuit board, and we'd close it all back up, and I'd put in a 5 1/4 floppy, and I could play a game. To me, analog horror is nostalgia, right? So I have to throw the biggest of big shout outs. This is Local 58. If you go to Local 58 TV, the writer, director, operator of this channel is an individual by the name of Chris Straub, which I would also highly recommend looking up Chris Straub's work, because I think you'll see some really familiar things in there that you might not have realized came from this one individual. Local 58 does not put out content very regularly. It's about once a year. So you can imagine my glee and my surprise and my enjoyment and my excitement tonight. I think at 10 p.m. Pacific time, there's going to be a new video premiering on Local 58. So before I really get into the omen, I'm going to be on pins and needles waiting for the new video to drop on Local 58. At present, in the chat for the premiere of this video, there are 300 people ready to go, and the video is not going to drop for another 11 hours. People are camping in the chat on this. I am silly excited. But again, in terms of analog horror, short form, little snippets of video, there isn't anything too extreme, and Chris Straub has only done 9 videos on this channel, and I think one is a teaser. So only 8 actual videos have been published. Just really, really good stuff. I mean, if you just start with the very first that I think put all this together, you are on the fastest available route, you'll get a sense of what the channel is trying to accomplish. In a very short form, 2 to 5 minute snippet of YouTube video, I think it is more effective at creating a sense of cosmic and existential dread than like a really good episode of Black Mirror, where, you know, technology is bad and technology will be your undoing. Local 58 can do something almost as effective in like 3 minutes. 3 minutes of very highly edited, targeted sort of analog horror. Again, it's super, super good. Contingency. I think that's the name of the second video that he put out. Again, why am I doing this from memory? Hold on. I have Local 58 TV's YouTube channel up, and yes, the second video he did is called Contingency. It's alternate history, but it's alternate history under the vibe of you watching like a classic 60s television broadcast, and an emergency warning is playing, and it's very eerie what the emergency warning is trying to tell you to do. So this one is phenomenally more successful in that I believe, I'm looking at the numbers here, Local 58 has 540,000 subscribers, and I think every single video of his has broken at least 1 million views. His most watched video is 3.7 million views. So again, I feel like that is correct. I'm trying to draw people to the channel. There's going to be a premiere tonight. I'm silly excited. I love what this does for short form dread storytelling. And it's never really sort of overt or explicit. It's just supposed to kind of tweak your worldview in the best way that like alternate reality games also do this too. It's just to kind of leave you feeling a bit unsettled and know where to put that energy. Like, oh, I'm kind of creeped out now and I don't know what to do with this. And so I guess I'll share it with other people. So I'm creeped out by it, and I hope that you will be too. I love it. I love it so much. Oh, see, Raj, and again, I don't think you're going to have anyone arguing with you on this one in the comments. Low to mid-budget pieces of horror content are always the best. The more money a horror story gets, the easier it becomes to make it kind of pointless. And again, with more money comes more expectations, more earnings, more producers, more directors and writers and editors. Everybody starts getting involved. There are so many of these concepts that we love today that were kind of born out of a filmmaker going like, I've got $100,000, I've got these actors for these days, I need to make this thing, and then it's over. I can't go back and reshoot. I can't go back and fix this or do that. If the monster doesn't work, we've got to figure out another solution. And it's like creativity at the bleeding edge of low budget is always the most exciting to me. When you see that movie actually finished, that blows my mind. It blows my mind every single time. Like those people went out there and tried to do something and then they did it, and now it was a movie exists is incredible to me. Oh, time to resurrect MySpace. Undead Tom will Dead Space back. Well, I just, you know, again, with everything that's all the calamity that is social media today and how horrible it's become, I always kind of look at, you know, like Tom from MySpace. I hope he's out there living his best life. I hope he's having a good time. So I just kind of want to wrap this up. My voice is starting to go, so I'll do some housekeeping. Last week was busy, and I just kind of want to brag because I got out an editorial on Android 12L on the Surface Duo. I finally published this. I'm really excited working with the folks at Velotrick. Whew. I always mispronounce the name of the company, and that's bad because we're sponsoring videos on my channel. Velotric electric bicycles. This was a big video for me to put together and put out there. I was really stoked about that. The iFi Audio Griffin is an incredible portable DAC. That was really fun. I reviewed the Rinky Pixel Watch case. I've got the Rinky case on my Pixel Watch. I actually have it on right now. So you have like this little plastic border edge that better protects the sides of the Pixel Watch. The One More Arrow spatial audio with head tracking on a $100 earbud is absolutely phenomenal. And then last but not least, a little editorial just talking about how chargers for smartwatches are kind of terrible e-waste. So lots of good stuff from last week. I got a bunch of things on the schedule to put out for this week. I can finally start digging into a bit more of this. And I'm hoping to kind of cover a bit more lifestyle stuff as we start getting into the holidays and sales. Like not just, I have reviewed this phone and these are the specs and you should buy it or not buy it, but just more, I've been using these phones. We did a special zoo trip for Lex yesterday. It's called Boo at the Zoo. Kids dressing up in costumes and walking around a zoo. And I shot it all on a Sony Xperia 1 Mark IV, and it's all this brilliant 4K 120 footage. And it's like you set it to music and you're like, I've just created this incredible video memory of the day in 4K slow motion. It looks so good. I was like, I really need to talk about that kind of stuff more. It's tricky because I try not to like share too much of my daughter on social media, but some of the footage is just stunning. And it's silly things. It's like her and a friend are at the reptile house and like pointing at the glass, and you slow it down to 1/4 speed and it just looks so much more dramatic. It's such a cheat. It's not like I'm any great, documentary filmmaker, but 4K 120 makes me look way more capable. It's so funny. So folks, it's Halloween night. I hope you live in an area where maybe you'll get some trick-or-treaters, or if you have kids like Marie and I, we have a 7-year-old. We're really excited to go take her out, walk around a neighborhood and get some candy. And I hope that you're finding some fun in this time of year. I know the holidays can get really ratcheted and cynical and gimmicky, and lots of companies are wanting you to buy on the holidays, but I feel like the day itself can still be special. We're going to set up a little mini ofrenda with all of my phone screens just to kind of remember some loved ones for Dia de los Muertos. And I feel like that can be a way that we make the day special for ourselves, not just, we bought lots of candy and look at all these decorations that we put up. We've got marigolds downstairs and some sugar skulls, and we're going to tell some fun stories of people that we remember. And we're going to watch The Omen and Local 58. And we're going to go out and do some trick-or-treating before it gets too dark, and it's going to be awesome. So Gormlord, Juan, your homework is to check out Leprechaun in Space. It is real. All right, I will try to find Leprechaun in Space. I genuinely did not know that existed. So now it gets to exist in my brain. Thank you. That could have been a very valuable piece of good information, but instead my brain will just have Leprechaun in Space in it. So folks, I want you all to have a fantastic week. Stay safe tonight. Crazy things do happen when lots of people are going out and partying or celebrating or having fun. So keep your head on a swivel. Have good technology at your disposal. Make sure your phone is charged and you're in good coverage. Don't go off doing silly things out in the woods with a dead smartphone. And just try to find some of that joy. If it's a family member, if it's a child, if it's a grandchild, if it's a cousin or a niece or a nephew. These days are so precious, and we can get lost in the cynicism of celebrating a holiday, but it's always good to kind of come back and say like, hey, this was meaningful to me and this was special and fun for me. That's what I hope everybody gets to share. And if it's a spooky movie, or if it's a candy run, or if it's just, telling stories about people or remembering people in your family, then I think any of that totally worth getting into the season, getting into the mind, getting into the mindset, getting into the fun of it. So have a fantastic tonight. Have a good night tonight.
I want you all to have a fantastic week. I want you to do awesome with your technology. I want you to be awesome with your technology. Catch you all back here for another proper episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. Be safe. Take care of yourself. Take care of yourself so you can take care of others. I'll catch you back. I love you all.